Hello everyone and welcome back to the MyFootballWriter YouTube channel, and today it's another transfer video. Norwich City, within the first 10 days of the transfer window in January, have already looked as if they're going to secure their second signing of the window. It's a player they've been linked with since the Christmas period, according to reports in his native country. It's the Czech Republic international winger Matej Jurasek. He looks to be joining from Slavia Prague. It was reported today, the day of recording, the 10th of January, by Fabrizio Romano and also Connor Southwell of the Pink 'Un, that Norwich City had a deal agreed, and it's just now down to the final talks with agents to discuss contracts and also medical testing for Jurasek to officially become a Norwich City player and their 9th signing of the 2024-25 season. But as we usually do with transfer videos here on the channel, we'll do a bit more of a deep dive on the deal, a bit more about the player, where they play, also just general info about them so that all of you Norwich City fans can get excited about the next possible player in a yellow and green shirt. So first things first with Jurasek, 21 years old, which would make him Norwich's technically second 21-year-old of the signing of the window, when they also brought in Lewis Dobbin, turned 22 on the day he was announced. But another young player for Norwich City to bring in, as discussed. Also a Czech Republic international. I believe it's 8 appearances for the Czech national team. He even scored a goal for them. So a player who is very much seen in with high regards by his own country's FA and their setup. And his international manager has also played for, I believe, the under-20s for the Czech Republic at an international level as well. So someone who clearly has got a lot of high praise within his own country and somewhat of a regular in their national team. So once again, another really young signing going to be made by Johannes Torup and Ben Napper, Norwich's sporting director. I believe if this signing is to be made, that will be 9 for the whole window, with the oldest player at the time of signing being 23 in Anis Ben Slimane. So we knew that they were going to bring down the average age of the squad, and if they made signings in January, they were going to have to fit the profile and their transfer strategy, which they already have done. They've signed a 22-year-old in Dobbin. They've now signed not now signed, but it looks very likely that they're going to sign a 21-year-old in Jurasek. Just as I said earlier, it's down to the final medical tests, and it's also down to meetings with representatives to discuss a contract, get the deal over the line, and then he can be unveiled as a Norwich City player. On to the next point. He's a left footer. Now, a few of you were quick to point out in the last transfer video that Lewis Dobbin isn't left footed, he's right footed, which only made him the second of 8 signings for Norwich overall this season as right footers. Jurasek, though, because I've actually looked at it properly, he is a left footer, but he plays as a right winger. So even though we've seen Borja Sainz, now it's confirmed he has been suspended for 6 matches due to spitting at Chris Metham in our match against Sunderland last month. Even though this could be the argument of, oh, is this the Sainz replacement straight away? He plays on the other side, and Norwich do need a right winger. They've been playing right wing roulette for the last few months of this season. We've seen Christian Fasnacht now leave, go back to BSC Young Boys. They've played Amankwa Forson there. They've played Kaide Gordon there, who now it looks as if maybe with this move, along with the Dobbin transfer, this could well be it for Kaide Gordon. It probably now is a bit more likely that he'll be recalled by Liverpool because he simply won't be getting the game time over a new signing. And Norwich have even used Oscar Svartal there, who's 18 years old and a player they didn't see playing much this season, but he's had a lot more first team involvement than maybe Johannes Torup had not perhaps hoped or liked, but maybe than he wanted to use him for. But they're signing a natural right winger with a lot of promise, and a player who's not really been in favour at his team Slavia Prague, which we'll now move on to. So he's currently at Slavia Prague, who'd have thought. He's only made 91 appearances in the 4 years almost that he's been at the Czech Giants, one of the biggest clubs in the country, Slavia Prague, where he's even won the Czech Republic equivalent of the Premier League and the Czech Republic version of the FA Cup. So he's tasted trophies and success in the Czech Republic. So it's not as if he's playing for a team who are somewhat mediocre. He's getting quite a few appearances every season for a really high up and highly rated club who even have played in the Europa League and the Champions League over the last few years as well. But 91 appearances for them, where he's not really been in favour as much this season. We'll move on to that and how many appearances he's made and how many starts. But again, just shows the trust in such a young player to have already got 100 appearances for a very strong outfit in the Czech Republic equivalent of the Premier League. But also he's had several loan spells elsewhere where he's honed his craft in the lower leagues in the Czech Republic. But still, nearly 100 appearances senior for a big club in your own country, and to have made nearly double-digit appearances for your national team. All this at 21 years old. It really, the sky is the limit, it seems, for Matej Jurasek, and maybe a move to England and a high-intensity, high-paced league like the Championship. Maybe that could be the move for him that he feels he could use with to really test himself, play in England, which a lot of overseas players want to do because it's seen as the best league in the world and the best setups in the world. So I think for himself as well, this could be a very promising move, and one in which, if it goes well, could maybe end up being sold for a good profit. And when you look at the amount of money Norwich are spending on this transfer, which we now move on to, it's not a bad sum at all. It's €7 million is the deal that has been agreed between Norwich City and Slavia Prague. That equates to just under £6 million, which is pretty good money. But Norwich originally bidded €4 million, which I want to say equates at about £3 million, around that sort of estimate, which Slavia Prague made clear they wanted more money. They were holding out for €7 million, and Norwich City have paid it. And this is something that Norwich would never usually do. They're usually quite stern when it comes to business, and they don't usually try and have their money squeezed out of them. They tend to be smart with business. But in all credit to Slavia Prague, I would imagine they really sold the deal to Norwich, and they would have said, look, this is what sort of player you're getting. And as much, of course, with him being young, he even has a long-term contract as well. I believe his contract after he joined he originally signed for them in 2020, but his current contract runs until 2027. So there's 2 years still left on that deal, and Slavia Prague would have wanted to have capitalised and made as much money as possible. So credit to them in that sense, but credit to Norwich as well, because they're showing that they have got a man who they really want, and they've wanted since first reported by Czech media over the Christmas period that Norwich wanted to sign, and they've not backed down, and they've gone in and they've said, you know what, fine, we'll pay the money that you want and we'll bring in this player, because not only do they need a player in his position, and maybe of his quality, we'll wait and see on that front, they wanted him. Evidently, they wouldn't have spent €7 million if they thought that he wasn't any good or he wouldn't fit this system and that he can do well in it. And if he ends up having a really good half a season, or maybe he's sort of more integrated as a first teamer next season and he goes on to do really well, Norwich could probably make a decent amount of money on Jurasek. And as we've seen before, that is what Norwich City like to do. They are, although not so much anymore, they have been a self-funding club, and they thrive on buying cheap talent and selling them on for big fees, or they get academy players and they do the same. But the last point, and it's about Jurasek's season so far in the Czech Republic equivalent of the Premier League in 24-25. He's played 24 matches, but he's not even started half of those matches. That was a big factor in this transfer as well. Jurasek wanted to leave the club due to a complete lack of game time, and he wants a new challenge where he can be promised first team football. It was somewhat similar with when Norwich signed Mankwa Forsen from Red Bull Salzburg, another really big team in their domestic league that weren't promising this young talent game time, which is what any player needs to become more consistent and become a better player. You want to adapt yourself in matches and come up against the very best and showcase your abilities. So this is clearly a similar feeling for Jurasek, and in the 24 matches he's played, he's got 5 goals and assists combined. That's a split of 2 goals and 3 assists, so it's not overly bad when you consider he's not exactly starting many games, he's not getting many minutes to influence a lot of matches. But Norwich, they are in need of another goal scorer, especially now with their top scorer out for 6 matches due to suspension. Josh Sargent is now back. It looks as if for the FA Cup match with Brighton at the weekend, it looks as if he might get 15 minutes or so. But not only for the need of Norwich needing it position-wise, they need a player who has got a good outlet in front of goal. They need someone who can set up teammates. They need someone who can score goals themselves, because apart from Sainz, Norwich don't really have another sort of big natural goal scorer other than Josh Sargent, which we saw in the first 5 games of the season when Norwich only had 2 goal scorers, and they were Sainz and Sargent. So they do need a player like Jurasek who can just be attacking minded and front footed and try and help his team out with goals and assists. That's what every footballer tries to do. It helps when you're an attacker. And being a right winger and left footed, I would imagine we're going to see a lot of what Borja Sainz does just on the other wing. Cuts in from one side, shifts it onto their stronger foot, and just tries to curl one into the top corner. And if Jurasek can start doing that every week for the rest of the season, I don't mind that whatsoever. But anyway, what are your thoughts on Norwich City's newest potential signing? They may get their man they've wanted for a while. It's just a matter of time now, and the last few bits before the transfer is confirmed. Let us know in our comments section on this video. We hope you've enjoyed it. It's goodbye for now, and we'll see you in the next video of ours here on the MyFootballWriter YouTube channel.